Welcome to the Inspire&Dine. My name is Sabrina. I'm a student at the Center for Technology and Management, and I'm really happy that you are here tonight. As you might have already spotted it, we are currently here at the so-called center. That's the home of the CDTM students. And we are live streaming this event right now from Munich into your living room. On that note, I'd like to mention that we, of course, obey to all COVID-19 regulations. Last semester, we established already this nice tradition of having people sharing where they are currently dialing in from. And I think it would be great to have this again this semester. On the right side of the stream, you see the Slido tool. This is your chance to interact with us, to post questions, comment, and now we encourage you to share where you are. If you haven't been at one of the Inspire&Dines yet, let me just briefly introduce you of how the concept works. So we will have 4 speakers tonight. Each of them will have a roughly 10 minutes talk, followed by a 5 minutes Q&A session. And this is also when it's your turn again, because we invite you to come up with questions, and this can be already done during the talk as well. And just put them in the Slido tool, and we make sure to address them to the speakers. Coming to our 4 speakers, we have again managed to have inspiring 4 personalities here at the Inspire&Dine tonight. The first speaker of tonight will be Godenrath. He's the founding partner of Picus Capital, and he will talk about the future of early stage investing. But let me also briefly introduce you to the other speakers that we are joining or having here at the Inspire&Dine tonight. So the second speaker of tonight will be Max Josef Meyer. He has been already founding several ventures before, and he will tell us about his experience in how to build up companies effectively. And the third speaker of tonight is Abid Shafiq. Impressively, he has been founding while he was still studying, so he will talk a lot about his personal development story and what actually turned him into an entrepreneur. And the fourth speaker of tonight will be Anna Alex. She has been founding already 2 ventures in her career, and her current venture is all about sustainability in business, and this is where she also share insights tonight with us. And we have a special edition for you tonight. You might wonder what CDTM students are usually working on. And besides our mandatory courses that we have to take during our studies here at the center, we also have so-called electives. They can be from any topic, from business or tech. And this time we will present pitches to you and projects to you that students have been working on for the past 2 weeks in a hackathon on the topic of how to boost student mental health. And since the Inspire&Dine is all about connecting and getting to know other people, we of course have a networking session that we invite you to join right after the official part of our event. And it's time to come to our first speaker of tonight. As already mentioned, Godenrath is the founder of Picus Capital. He founded and built up the company here in Munich in 2016. Picus sees itself as the sparring partner for entrepreneurial talents, and they have been investing in very early stage companies. They've also been investing in CDTM companies such as Alasco, Personio, AV Medical, and many more. And Robin has been graduating with his master's in finance from WHU and joined McKinsey as a consultant in 2014. His first entrepreneurial experience was already at WHU when he founded Rebound, an anti-aging hangover drink. And we have Robin tonight joining here at the center. He will talk about the future of early stage investing. Thank you so much for being here, Robin. Welcome on stage.
Thanks a lot for the kind introduction.
Thank you.
So, it's great to be here. Always very excited to speak to young, ambitious students which are interested in entrepreneurship. I want to take the kind of limited time I have today to tell you a little bit about what's happening actually in the startup ecosystem, a little bit more from a funding perspective and an investor perspective, in general in the last couple of years, but also maybe some of the changes we have seen more recently in the turbulent times which we are in at the moment with COVID and co. And also what this means for our own philosophy in early stage investing and the entire early stage investment ecosystem. I think a couple of trends many of us have seen in the last couple of years is that capital becomes much more a commodity over time. So if we look at kind of the more hottest tech companies and what investors are able to invest in them, it's not only about capital, it's not only about valuation. Founders are much more ambitious with regard to which investors they want to have in their company. So they ask for access to network. That can be access to a customer network, a B2B network, but it can be also a network of investors for the follow-up rounds, whether it's equity or debt. They ask for specific expertise in the business fields, so for the business models, but also in the kind of markets they are active in. So they really need content support. But they also ask for reputation in the end, which is in the end signaling. So if you really kind of look at kind of the most reputable VCs globally, these are in the end often the Sequoias and Benchmarks of the world, which may be doing some PR and so on, but in the end they just invested in the most promising and strongest and most successful technology firms. And that's kind of creates a certain self-reinforcing cycle if you have a very reputable investor in your company, which gives you a certain certainty around the next rounds. And there are also kind of early stage programs like Y Combinator. Out of Y Combinator in the US, some of the most interesting and successful tech companies came. Many founders are very interested to have that Y Combinator stamp on their company as well, even if they have to give away some equity early on for not very high investment amounts. So these are kind of some general trends, and the more recent trends we see with regard to COVID is that before COVID, we saw a lot of companies scaling very fast and just kind of going for top line growth, and with the idea that at some point they outgrew competition, and maybe then you can find better unit economics kind of in a situation where synergies and network effect kicked in more significantly. However, in times of uncertainty and of a potential recession, this is more difficult because these kind of models you cannot just turn break even overnight, and you usually have quite high capital intensity until you get to a certain size. So we see, if we look at kind of newer companies being founded, we see a lot of more defensible business models. We see more complex products and more business models where there's also not one winner takes it all game, and where you can manage your capital intensity more with the growth path you're choosing. And in particular with regard to these kind of models, I think the early stage of founding a company is much more ambitious, thinking about the MVP and the go-to-market and other strategic decisions. I think that's kind of more complex with regard to these models because if you kind of on a scaling path or a pure scaling path, you can just run fast and break things, and that doesn't work anymore for many business models in many markets. So we thought a lot about what that actually means for early stage investing, and we thought about the question where entrepreneurship actually starts. Does it start when you are raising 2 million and you are talking to potential investors? In our opinion, it doesn't start then. In our opinion, entrepreneurship starts when a potential entrepreneur thinks about markets, about business models, and maybe about already founding the company, about first hires, first customers, which is way before that. So what alternatives do founders have in that early stage to get kind of more external support? There are incubation programs. In our opinion, the time of incubation programs is already long over. The best founders also in our portfolio would not go into an incubation setup. They want to have their own company. They want to control it. They don't want to give away the majority of the company. It should be an independent, founder-driven company. And I think that's a great development because these are typically the greatest companies which have the strongest founders and the biggest opportunities. So that's probably rather tricky. On the other hand, you have accelerator programs. Not every accelerator is a Y Combinator, so accelerators typically manage a high number of startups, and the quality varies. So maybe 10% of the startups going through an accelerator really are successful in the end. Founders have to give away part of the equity early on. They don't know exactly what they get for that. And the signal and the brand kind of is also discuss worthy. So who fills that gap? In our opinion, the venture capital firms and venture capital funds have to fill that gap. We think that it's the job of the venture capital firms to already discuss with very early founders before they even think about fundraising, maybe even with founders before they even found their company, to support them with their market expertise. Venture capital funds are active throughout different continents, throughout different markets. They have a lot of insights and learnings which are relevant for the strategic decisions of the founders. I also mentioned some of them, kind of what's the go-to-market, what's the first product features, etc. I think The network is extremely valuable at that point. So already talking to first pilot customers, but also not only the first money, it's also the first customers, and it's the first hires as well. So also on the hiring front, how do I find co-founders? How do I find key management members? That's all kind of very important questions and value add elements at this point. So why should venture capital funds do this kind of even before the company is founded? We think they should do that even without any restrictions or commitments of the founders. We think if a venture capital firm really contributes significant value in these early stages and is really kind of a strategic sparring partner to early founders in this process, if a company gets founded and at some point the founder thinks about raising capital, I think that investors are in a real pole position to be the first investor in that company. And I think it will be hard for any other investor coming in at that point and trying to invest as well. I also think that even also in terms of deal, it might be very attractive also in terms of the terms kind of asked by the founders for the funds which proved significant value before. And if a founder decides to not go with the investors who supported them so far, but maybe bootstrap or take another investor, maybe then the value contribution was not strong enough. So venture capital firms have to be believers in their own value contribution and have to be believers that founders want to keep working together with them if they help them out already early on. I think that's a win-win for the entire ecosystem because it also increases the likelihood of success significantly. And I think it's important if you look at it more from a macro perspective. So at Europe as a kind of technology leader in the world, competing with the big tech firms from the US and the regulatory tech firms from Asia, I think it's more important than ever that kind of investors but also entrepreneurs are collaborating more effectively and better together to build more successful technology firms. So I think that's what also influences our philosophy a lot. We work together with a lot of kind of promising founders very early on. Some of them were already mentioned before, also, for example, an ex-CDTM founder, Max Meyer, who founded FinAuto, who we also supported already from early on, and many other companies. And we think we can work together there with the kind of best founders and the best venture capital firms along the way. So it's basically the backbone of our own early stage pre-seed investment strategy on its own. So yeah, I hope I could share some valuable insights on the future of early stage investing. And thanks a lot for the time and your attention. Happy to answer some questions you might have.
Thank you, Robert, for your great talk. We already have some questions coming in from the audience. So the first question tonight is, what was your motivation to found Picus?
I think the motivation behind founding Picus was the same as if you found a startup. It was not like that I just had the ambition to just go into venture capital. I really saw an opportunity in the market because I thought that kind of in particular in the early stage venture capital area, there was a need for more efficiency and more structure with regard to how do I actually find investments, how do I kind of really get 99% of all relevant startups on the radar, to use networks more structured and efficiently, to use kind of scrapping tools of LinkedIn, Crunchbase registers in a more kind of professional, basically more structured way, and also kind of throughout the entire due diligence and also the management of the portfolio companies to bring in more the kind of due diligence or the diligence of a financial investor into this kind of entrepreneurial area. And the other element was that I really liked the idea of having a kind of long-term investment philosophy with a privately financed structure, which allows you to make fundamentally maybe a bit better decisions in terms of that you are not have to think about how is my exposure in a certain region, what's kind of my life cycle, when do I have to exit, can I invest in that business model, is it enough tech, can I invest in that country? In the end, with a privately financed structure, it's just about the best founders and the best businesses. So I think that makes fundamentally a lot of sense, and it puts us quite a lot on the same kind of perspective as the founders. And I like that idea a lot.
Thank you very much. The next question coming from the audience is, what kind of teams are you looking for to invest in?
I think teams is a good point, because key teams is all kind of, it's absolute key in the early stages. Market is important, other things, but a lot you can change. I think key in the end, if we look at the best portfolio companies at our wall, it's not the most attractive business models or markets, it's always the best teams. And you have a lot of kind of smart people, you have a lot of analytical people and structured people, but in the end, that's also a commodity. That's something you have to have, of course. but there are thousands out there. And in the end, the most important thing is really kind of the entrepreneurial drive and the kind of energy level and passion, because as I mentioned before, the best companies are the ones which are hiring the best people. So you don't need 3 great founders, you need 40, 50 great people. So the most important team skill is, or founder skill, is hiring. So if you really have to convince other kind of people who are maybe better than yourself in another kind of another skill to work for you, maybe even with less equity, I think you have to be really good in telling a story and having a great energy level and being there with passion and not just thinking about it as a next opportunity and maybe the next career step, because I think people notice that. So I think that's the most important team skill, and beside all the kind of standard things like complementary teams and so on. But I think that's what we are really looking for, kind of a certain entrepreneurial spark.
Yeah, the audience is also interested to know to what degree is your approach to startups different than from other VCs?
I think I mentioned it a little bit already kind of in my speech. I think one thing is you can always talk to Picus, not only if you're fundraising. You can talk with us if you have a specific business model and you want to get insights to it and get a venture perspective. You can even talk to us if you're just thinking about different markets and you don't even know your business model yet, because we think that's the value add we can deliver. And when you talk to us, there are no constraints. We hope to kind of add a lot of value, and maybe if you found an interesting company we want to invest, and hopefully you take us as an investor if we helped you kind of on your journey early on. So I think our approach kind of is even much earlier, and we see ourselves, as I mentioned, as a kind of lifelong entrepreneurial sparring partner. And lifelong is another kind of element. We don't think in terms of 6-7 years, we think in terms of 10 years plus, and building massive and successful and sustainable companies. So I think we are also looking at opportunities in that way, kind of what are kind of the next big trends, and if we like something, we can maybe even stay invested 15 years or 20 years, similar to a founder who is very passionate about his company. So I think we're trying to have a lot of this kind of entrepreneurial perspective, not go maybe sometimes a little bit away from a pure investor perspective.
One more question from the audience. How important is sustainability in climate change for Picus investments?
We are, as a kind of company, part of the Avantis Group. Avantis Group is maybe something like an air travel star alliance, so a group of firms which are sharing similar visions and sometimes working together, but there are no ownership implications. And the Avantis Group is all about kind of what does the planet have to look like if there are 10 billion people living sustainably together. And kind of all the companies in it try to contribute to that, which means every of our investments has to have a certain sustainability angle. That doesn't mean that every investment is a green energy investment, but it means it has to have this positive impact on society. We also think an HR management solution like Personio, helping SMEs out with their employees and serving customers better, has a positive impact on society. So that's totally fine for us as an investment, but we would probably not go for online gambling. And sometimes you have these sweet spot investments, like for example Enpal in Berlin, which is building something like a renewable energy tech company, is a great business opportunity, but also makes the planet kind of much better place. So if that intercepts, that's kind of some things which we really love, and that's why Enpal is, I think, so far our biggest total investment in our portfolio so far.
Mm-hmm. I think we're already at the last question of our Q&A session. But do you have an explicit example of how you help a pre-seed startup?
Yeah, I think hopefully Max, who talks later, would also agree to that. But I think we have like 10 plus portfolios in our 10 plus portfolio companies in our portfolio where we were there from day one. So I think, to name a couple of things, I think last year there were probably more than 30 people which we basically found with our HR team, and where we sent over the lead, which are now co-founders or management members in pre-seed portfolio companies from us. So I think we are very involved on the hiring side. We are extremely involved on the fundraising side. We can make introductions to 95% of all the top funds in Europe. We can make introductions to the majority of all top funds in the US, where we have a presence now as well. And we are very close as a strategic entrepreneurial sparring partner with a global perspective. So we know kind of what trends are happening on other continents and what strategic decisions are made. So we really want to kind of support the companies, not only in the boards, but really in their kind of daily decision making. But also kind of things like customer network and kind of really functional expertise, in particular on marketing, sales topics. I think it's a very broad range, and I think venture capital firms can always talk about it, but what's for us most important is our references in our portfolio. And I think we are also working with that very actively, because we think so far we have done quite a good job there, and a lot of the founders are very happy with our support and know that it goes far beyond pure capital injections.
Thank you very much, Robin. This was it already for the Q&A session. Thank you so much for being here at the center. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed our talks and see you at the next Inspire and Dine.